Welcome back, everyone, to the last session of the second day of the GLF Climate. Please take a seat if you have not done that already, and get ready for the last plenary of today, which is co-hosted by C4ICRAF and the GLF about the growing...
So if I can invite the speakers who are actually here with us in the room, Jenna and Patty. We have a number of people. Oh, so we haven't started. So I've got to do that again. To have such a big crowd of you here.
Yeah.
Hello. Hi, nice to meet you.
Everybody to growing the momentum for agroecological transformation to resilient food systems, where we're trying to get a bridge between the United Nations Food Systems Summit and the COP26, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change here in Glasgow. And it's really struck me while I've been here, that we're dealing with, in general, a completely different group of people on the climate side than we were when we were looking at the agricultural side. And that's maybe one of the big problems that we have in getting integrated solutions to both adaptation and mitigation associated with agriculture. So, without further ado, I want to start by asking Gabriel Ferreiro, the incoming chair of the Committee on World Food Security, to give some opening remarks. Gabriel.
Thank you very much, Fergus. And allow me first to thank the Global Landscapes Forum for organizing this plenary on such a relevant topic, and obviously for inviting the chairperson of the Committee on World Food Security to provide some opening remarks today. Before taking the hat of the CFS chairperson, allow me to speak very briefly with my national hat as ambassador at large for global food security of my country, of Spain. Well, my country is one of the partners of the Coalition for Transforming Food Systems through Agroecology, and it's a signatory of the Agroecology Declaration of Engagement. And as the first agroecological producer in surface of the European Union and number 4th in the world, we are delighted to seeing how the momentum for agroecological transformation is growing exponentially. And now, with my CFS chair hat, well, I wish to commend the coalition and all the partners involved for coming together to drive the uptake of the policy recommendations on agroecology and other innovative approaches agreed by the Committee on World Food Security earlier this year. As many of you will already be aware of, the Committee on World Food Security is the most inclusive intergovernmental and inclusive global platform for all to build science evidence-based consensus on key issues needed to achieve zero hunger and zero malnutrition world through sustainable agriculture and food systems. At the committee, 133 member states, the UN system, the private sector, civil society, CGAIR, and the World Bank, all informed by its high-level panel of experts, come together in this unique space for all stakeholders to address critical and sometimes difficult and sensitive issues on food security and nutrition, like, no doubt, agroecological and other innovative approaches are. It is at the plenary, this year, 48th plenary of the committee, that the transformative partnerships platform on agroecological transitions was launched to bring and help incubate this coalition. And we now see how up-to-date the bold Agroecology Declaration of Engagement has been signed by 27 countries and around 35 organizations and growing. So from my perspective, I see, actually from the apex of the multilateral system where the CFS stands, how to the global, from the apex to national governments, to subnational and local ones, to landscapes and territories, to local communities, there is indeed a global movement emerging in support of a transition that is based on agroecological and other innovative approaches that builds on empowering small-scale producers, family farmers, and women, that promotes transformative governance at the landscapes and territorial levels as levers of the transition on food systems the world needs for climate and for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. This year, the committee indeed has provided globally agreed policy recommendations on agroecological and other innovative approaches, which has highlighted several issues. Inter alia, the need to first adopt context-appropriate transition pathways towards food systems that are resilient, equitable, diversified, that support climate change adaptation and mitigation, provide healthy diets accessible for all, and respect human rights for current and future generations. The recommendations also suggest that this need to improve the sustainability and resilience of agriculture and food systems by reducing the pressure on natural resources and negative environmental impacts while mitigating climate change. Promoting recycling, optimizing, or reducing, as appropriate, the reliance on external inputs, and facilitate the regeneration of soil health with the final objective of protecting and improving the human, animal, plant health, and the environment. And of course, integrating sustainability in all its dimensions throughout our agri-food systems, all of which, no doubt, come together at the landscapes level. It is in territories where all the dimensions of climate adaptation, mitigation, biodiversity, conservation, restoration of natural resources, landscapes, and biodiversity come together with prosperity, with food production, and with livelihoods. Dear colleagues, the Committee on World Food Security does not implement these policy products. It produces as global policy consensus on some of these complex issues. but relies on governments, on the UN agencies, on local actors, on civil society organizations, on farmers' organizations, on the business community, on academia and research institutions, and other partners to make use of these globally agreed policy guidelines in the form of policy recommendations and principles or voluntary guidelines in the design and formulation of policies, programs, and investments, especially at the national level and also at the subnational and landscapes level. Your action in the ground is what brings transformative change. This is why the coalition is an excellent example of partners that are coming together to make use of the Committee on World Food Security globally agreed products to create impact. I have committed as the chairperson of the CFS for the next 2 years to make the committee even more connected to what happens in the ground, to better serve as the global platform where all initiatives and country-level efforts find the space to learn, to share, and to be accountable. The Coalition and the Global Landscapes Forum, you will always find the CFS as such a space. So thank you once again for the opportunity of being here today and providing these remarks. Over to you, Emil. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. And you mentioned CFS 48, and we had an address opening the side event, launching the Transformative Partnership Platform from the President of Sri Lanka. And I was able to catch up with the President yesterday, and we've got an interview with him now that takes us on from June to what's happening today in Sri Lanka.
Hello, I'm Fergus Sinclair, Chief Scientist at C4 ICRAF and co-convener of the Transformative Partnership Platform on Agroecology, known as the TPP. Here at the Global Landscapes Forum, on the sidelines of COP26 in Glasgow, I was able to interview the President of Sri Lanka about recent developments in implementing a national agroecological transition. Welcome, Your Excellency Gotabaya Rajapaksa, President of Sri Lanka. It's a huge privilege to be able to take a few minutes out of the frenetic activity at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP26, here in Glasgow, to talk with you about linkages between agriculture and climate change. Firstly, could I ask you how agriculture and food systems are linked to climate change, mitigation and adaptation, and what implications this has for national policy?
A considerable amount of greenhouse gas emissions come from agriculture. This is especially true of large-scale agriculture and agricultural practices that rely excessively on artificial fertilizers. Excess use of artificial fertilizer can lead to nitrogen pollution on land, waterways and in the atmosphere, which the Colombo Declaration on Sustainable Nitrogen Management seeks to reduce. At the same time, agriculture and food systems are very vulnerable to climate change as well. In Sri Lanka, which is a developing island nation, climate change has resulted in changes in weather patterns that have affected agricultural output. Climate change mitigation and adaptation measures are therefore of great importance in policy making when it comes to agriculture.
Thank you for being so clear, Your Excellency. Back in June this year, at the 48th session of the Committee on World Food Security, you changed the game by urging countries to take bold steps to tackle climate change, and led the way by announcing a national ban on the import of harmful agrochemicals to Sri Lanka. How difficult has it been to implement this policy, and how has it had to be adapted as implementation has unfolded?
The restrictions made to import of harmful artificial fertilizer as well as of weedicides and pesticides has met with a lot of resistance in Sri Lanka. Some of this resistance is due to entrenched lobbies that want to promote these substances. However, despite overuse of chemical fertilizer leading to soil degradation and inefficiency in farming over many years, there is still a very widespread belief within the farming community that organic fertilizer will lead to lower yields. For this reason, there is a lot of resistance coming from the farming community against the restriction of these imports, even though such restrictions are better for human health as well as the health of the planet. We also have significant practical challenges in moving away from a system that was heavily dependent on artificial fertilizers and towards organic agriculture. One significant issue is increasing production of organic fertilizer domestically, since there are serious concerns about transplanting different microbial cultures. As a result, we are left having to seek newer alternatives such as nitrogen extracts, which is in short supply globally. We need support from the international community to obtain technological solutions to the problems caused by lack of viable alternatives to chemical fertilizers. We also need scientific alternatives for chemical weedicides and pesticides. Sri Lanka has taken the bold step of trying to turn its food systems organic in a short span of time. Such bold steps are needed to achieve transformative change. However, if our attempts at change don't receive the support it requires, our efforts may not succeed. This will send entirely the wrong signal about sustainability at what most people agree is a very critical time for the health and future of our planet.
Thank you for being so candid, Your Excellency. Now, you have seen that so far 27 countries and 35 organisations have listened to your call to action and signed a declaration of commitment to transform food systems through agroecology. What advice do you have for this new coalition to ensure that it gets beyond talking about the problems of agriculture and climate change to start acting at scale to tackle them?
I am very glad that more countries are acting to transform food systems through agroecology. I strongly believe that such urgent action is essential to make global food systems more sustainable, which will also increase food security, which is a major concern for most countries. However, I am firmly of the belief that there is a lot more scope for international cooperation in this regard. Countries with more developed agricultural systems can do more to share the technologies they use and to support developing countries that are trying to improve the quality of their food systems through agroecology. I hope that more such support will be forthcoming in the future as more and more countries start to see the importance of sustainable agriculture globally.
Thank you for that very inspirational call to action, Your Excellency. It was a great privilege to talk with you today.
And now we can move straight on, and Emile Frisson is going to present to us the details of the coalition that we've been referring to. Emile.
Thank you, Fergus. It's a pleasure to be with you here today and talk about this transformation of food systems based on agroecology. As we heard from the president of Sri Lanka, over the past years, we've seen a great growing recognition of the need for food system transformation, deep transformation, in order to address the challenges of climate change, of biodiversity loss, of food insecurity and malnutrition, and social inequities. And we also heard the growing recognition about the important role that diversified agroecological systems can play to implement this kind of transformation that is needed. In May this year, a call for food system transformation based on the 13 principles of agroecology that were developed by the high-level panel of experts of the Committee on World Food Security was signed by more than 350 organizations and 850 scientists and food system actors in order to really insist on the urgency and the importance for such transformation. Indeed, diversified agroecological systems can provide the resilience to climate change through this diversification. And also, it has the potential to transform food systems that are today providing 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions into carbon neutral food systems by reducing the emissions, but also by sequestrating carbon in the soils and in the vegetation. That is including also trees through agroforestry being introduced into more and more into landscapes. It is time indeed now to move from speech to action. And that's the purpose of the coalition on agroecology that we are talking about here today. The aim of this Agroecology Coalition is to implement the 13 principles of agroecology. It aims to be a major initiative to mainstream agroecology away from just being a marginal activity as it has been years ago, to become mainstream by implementing the 4 areas that have been identified by the coalition as ways to move forward. And the first one that was already mentioned by Ambassador Ferrero is to implement the policy recommendations of the Committee on World Food Security on agroecological and other innovative approaches that have been endorsed by FAO and its member nations, as well as the 13 principles of agroecology set out by the HLPE. Also to strengthen research and development programs to support agroecological transformation, in particular by promoting local innovation through transdisciplinary and participatory approach between scientists, farmers, indigenous people, and other stakeholders in the food system. By strengthening the consistency of various sectoral policies aiming at agroecological transformation of food systems, including agricultural, forestry, fisheries, environmental, water, energy, health, and trade policies, and also harmonizing national policies with local policies, because indeed local actors, cities, regions can play a major role in promoting this agroecological transformation. And finally, the 4th area of implementation is to ensuring that public and private investments promote the adoption of large-scale implementation of agroecological practices. Various studies of investments in agriculture have shown that until recently, very little investments have been made in agroecology. Some studies showed between less than 1% and certainly less than 5% of agricultural investments were made in agroecology. That must be transformed, and moving from this minority to really being the main way of practicing sustainable agriculture. This has to be a transition and a transformation that is based on focusing and putting the focus on the people involved in the food system, the farmers, including women and young farmers, also the food system workers and the consumers that also have to change their behavior in order to make our food systems more sustainable. Investments must also increase, as I already mentioned. Now, where do we stand with this coalition? I think this has been one of the major outcomes of the Food System Summit, where a number of countries have taken the bold decision to insist on the importance of agroecology as the major way forward to make our food systems more sustainable. This coalition has been launched after the Food System Summit, and already 27 countries have signed the Declaration of Commitment of Engagement. This includes 13 countries from Africa, 6 countries from Europe, 5 countries from Asia, and 3 countries from Latin America. But many more are going to join this coalition and have expressed an interest in joining this. It has also, this Declaration of Engagement has also been signed by today 36. One was signed very recently, yesterday actually. 36 EU organizations, including the most 5 relevant UN organizations, the FAO, IFAD, World Food Programme, UNDP, and UNEP, but also a large number of research organizations, including the Transformative Partnership Platform on Agroecology that was already mentioned by Fergus, and that already brings themselves together a number of different research organizations. It has been signed by farming organizations at the regional level, ROPA, the West African Farmer Organization, AFA, the Asian Farmer Organization, by indigenous people organizations, as well as civil society organizations and philanthropic foundations. So there is a wide constituency that is now willing to work together towards mainstreaming agroecology and transforming our food systems. This transformation is already happening in many places around the world, and it is already happening at scale. I will just give a couple of examples. In Andhra Pradesh, more than 750,000 farmers have been practicing agroecology now for a number of years and have seen their productivity increase compared to farmers that continue the conventional synthetic input-based agriculture, have seen productivity increases, but more importantly, income increases by up to 50% in average. National policies are being put in place, and we just heard from the president of Sri Lanka, where the bold decision that he took to really fast track the transformation to agroecology. But similar national policies have been implemented in other countries like Mexico, Nicaragua, etc. Also, policies at the local level in many cities and regions around the world, steps have been taken to transform food systems to become more sustainable. And just in Glasgow at the COP26, the Glasgow Declaration that has now been signed by 100 cities and regions is calling for an integrated policy on food system transformation.
Thank you.
This coalition will work in close partnership with the Committee on World Food Security that, as was mentioned by Ambassador Ferrero, is the policy forum where food system issues are being discussed and agreed upon at the international level. Time is ripe for bold action. We know what is possible, we know it can be done, and we need to work together to make our food systems finally sustainable. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Emil. We're going to have a poll at this point for the audience to look at which of those 4 areas were most important, but we are very short of time, and so I'm actually going to move on from the poll and introduce a panel discussion that we're going to have, and I'm going to introduce each panelist as we go, and in fact the first contribution is from the Vice Minister of Environment for Peru, Alfredo Mamani Salinas, which is recorded.
Bueno, mi nombre es Alfredo Mamani Salinas, soy el viceministro de Desarrollo Estratégico de los Recursos Naturales del Ministerio del Ambiente de Perú. Sí, efectivamente, Perú es uno de los primeros países que ha adoptado la Ley Marco de Cambio Climático y dentro de ello le ha dado bastante importancia al manejo de los bosques. En este caso y también en lo que vemos nosotros en todo el espectro de lo que constituye el manejo sostenible a cargo de las poblaciones que viven allá. Entonces, esto se ha construido en una plataforma en la que han participado los pueblos indígenas como más de 1000 personas representativas de todo el país. Esto nos ha dado prácticamente un reforzamiento para desarrollar el reglamento de la Ley Marco de Cambio Climático. Es una de las experiencias quizás muy pocas que existen en el mundo. Entonces, esta plataforma va a permitir desarrollar con mayor criterio y profundidad la adopción de políticas y de prácticas para el cuidado del medio ambiente. Va a beneficiar de varias maneras. Una, en lo que es fundamentalmente en adaptación. En adaptación porque estos pueblos tienen la particularidad de que son vulnerables. O sea, son económicamente pobres, pero además están ahí afectados por el cambio climático. Entonces, esta ley les va a dar un reforzamiento en que les van a permitir mejorar o hacer un mejor uso de las tierras que tienen, producir los bienes y poder distribuirlos equitativamente en la población y quizás hacia adelante crecer y recuperar muchas de las especies que estaban en proceso de extinción. Entonces la ley les da el empoderamiento y para adelante ellos consideran que van a poder ser propietarios de algunos terrenos o de algunos bosques, pero defendiéndolos para su desarrollo sostenible. O sea, les va a beneficiar económicamente, pero además van a tener el cuidado del recurso que están manejando. Bueno, el Ministerio del Ambiente es el líder en lo que es la implementación de este marco del cambio climático. Tenemos varios instrumentos. Uno, tenemos el Acuerdo Nacional de Cambio Climático, en la que están involucrados varios ministerios, principalmente el Ministerio de Agricultura. Entonces, somos muy cercanos, nosotros les damos los lineamientos y el Ministerio de Agricultura los aplica. Entonces, ¿cómo nosotros les vamos a dar? Justamente, esta es la participación activa de las comunidades, tanto de la sociedad a varios niveles de gobierno. Nosotros como medio ambiente hacemos la coordinación y el apoyo a nivel de gobierno central, gobiernos regionales, gobiernos locales y las comunidades. y además hacemos partícipes a la sociedad civil organizada. Esto le da una fortaleza porque también existen organismos adscritos que están coparticipando el Ministerio del Ambiente y el Ministerio de Agricultura. Entonces consideramos nosotros somos el camino, somos el coordinador de todos ellos. Entonces también recibimos el soporte y apoyo de instituciones de cooperación internacional. A través de ellos los direccionamos para que haga ese apoyo directo o a través nuestro a esas comunidades. Entonces ellos sí incluso están participando actualmente en este evento, en la COP26, como parte de los, diríamos, apoyantes o, diríamos, los partnerships, ¿no? Los colaboradores para lograr los objetivos que se tienen. Yo creo que las recomendaciones sería importante que sean convocantes, o sea, que incluyan a todos los que tienen que ver con el uso de las tierras y de los bosques, ¿no? Y que sean inclusivos, que tengan, que recuperen aquellos conocimientos ancestrales que incluyan tanto a la mujer y tanto a las poblaciones vulnerables. Y otro, que los empoderen, o sea, que les den realmente a las poblaciones indígenas el conocimiento, recuperar el conocimiento que tienen y la forma como han sabido luchar en las adversidades de la adaptación al cambio climático. Ellos tienen mucha experiencia porque sus ancestros, sus antepasados les han enseñado y ellos continúan con esos procesos que podría ayudar mucho al mundo a poder recuperar muchas especies que están en peligro de extinción. Entonces considero que es importante que ninguno quede atrás, todos deberían de participar. Entonces yo llamo a los pueblos, a los otros hermanos pueblos que están en ese proceso, que incluyan a todos en la participación y más bien y con mejor criterio a los pueblos indígenas porque tienen sabias enseñanzas.
And now I'd like to, yeah, let's applaud the Vice Minister. I'd now like to turn to Jenna Tesdal, who's representing here Yungo and giving us a perspective from young people.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Fergus, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here. My name is Jenna Tesdal, and I am representing the youth constituency Yungo that liaises with UNFCCC, and I have the honor of doing so through my position in the network Young Professionals for Agricultural Development. And I really feel like the talk that was just given about these laws that are happening in Peru is the perfect segue to youth, because we also want to be included as a vulnerable group in these negotiations. And so what I'd like to talk a little bit about here is the Yungo constituency's position towards Cronivia, which is the agricultural portion of the UNFCCC negotiations and the COP. And so, of course, we have many points, 14 areas that we cover in our agriculture policy position towards Cronivia and the COP negotiations. And I just want to lay the framework of what we are advocating for and then talk about 3 main points because we don't have so much time here today. But the foundation of what young people want for these negotiations is the how and the what. And the what is agroecology. We want this at the center of all agricultural policies, programs that are being implemented. And then, of course, us as the youth constituency, we want co-creation of these policies with youth, with young people, but not only us, right? We stand in solidarity with many other vulnerable groups like women, indigenous people, and so we always want to advocate for this to happen in co-creation, co-leadership, co-implementation. So this goes also to the national implementation pathways and enforcement mechanisms as well. We want this happening at an international level, but also at national levels as well, because it is about the action on the ground where we are already active. Then 3 main points which really focus on the social aspects. So we want us to remember food security when we're doing these negotiations, right? We need to remember all the pillars of food security when we're talking about climate change as well, because we don't want to silo our knowledge. Like, this is our goal that we're doing here, is bringing these areas together. Then secondly, we have food sovereignty. This is extremely important to the youth constituency that this comes in, and this really ties in so well with the principles of agroecology, that we're really empowering the production, distribution, and consumption based on all 3 aspects of sustainability, and that we're really putting people at the center of our food systems. We're not putting any more markets at the center of these food systems. We're not putting corporations at the center of these food systems. It is about the people that the food is being produced for. And this is extremely key. Then third is also the aspect of a just transition. We don't want to leave people behind, and we want the human right to a clean and healthy environment to be recognized explicitly in these negotiations and also in the implementation. So this means a healthy environment in the workplace, in your home, and also, of course, in nature. And we want to make sure that in this just transition, a plurality of voices are included in these negotiations. So the Yungo constituency has pointed out that in the Cronivia negotiations, for example, trade unions and workers' voices haven't been included. And this is something that we want to see continued into the future, that these type of critical voices that are key to these discussions are also included. So in summary, the framework that we see really key is co-leadership with youth and also other vulnerable constituencies, and that what of agroecology in the framework of food security, food sovereignty, and a just transition. And I look forward to the discussion with our panelists.
Super. And with young people having such a clear articulation of what you want, I think the future is bright. Let me go to Monica Yator, who is from the Indigenous Women and Girls Initiative and from Kenya. Monica.
Oh, my name is Monica Yator. I'm the founder of the Indigenous Women and Girls Initiative. I am a pastoralist, I'm a feminist, I'm a climate justice feminist, working to ensure that agroecology is included in our policies. My motivation started when I did a training in Laikipia permaculture, courtesy of ActionAid. We did a 1-week training on agroecology, and out of that I realized that we are missing as women, that agroecology is actually very easy to do. What we require is the naturally available resources, and that is why I took the initiative to train my women group in Baringo, and that is how I started the movement of agroecology. The problem I'm seeing in agroecology is that women are willing to learn, and out of agroecology, women are becoming more empowered. In fact, we are challenging gender inequality in our communities. And when we have resources like food, when women can afford to sustain their families, that is gender equality for us, and that is agroecology. The major challenge I've experienced is that women do not own land. They have to ask permission. Some of them have to even share with other women resources. So a challenge is land. Another challenge is the corporate capture. We have a lot of seeds that women have to buy, and which is expensive. And again, we have policies that is not acknowledging agropastoralism in our communities. So that is a bigger challenge we have now. So far, I'm happy in Baringo. We have over 300 women with functional kitchen gardens, organic kitchen gardens. And we have many women looking forward to even advancing agroecology in their own farms. And agroecology to me is one thing that women can tap on and engage on because it's easy for them. So for me, agroecology is a livelihood for women in the rural areas. I train them with the demonstration how to make pesticides, organic pesticides. I trained them how to make compost manure, that is for fertilizers. I trained them on other alternative livelihoods such as poultry keeping and making poultry feeds, and also making fish feeds out of organic, and also training them how to do savings, that is village savings and association, to enhance their activities and to enhance their agroecology activities. We need more of community agroecology trainings. We need land tenure system for women. Most women do not own land. We need to do a lot of civic education on land rights on women. We need also to encourage community leadership structures to embrace agroecology from the community level. We also need county policies that integrate agroecology so that women can take lead and can earn a living and also feed their families. Also, to add on that, we need to have water rights policy so that every household has water for women to irrigate their lands, so that we support agroecology fully. I would like to know what is this COP26 speaking about the rural women, because our voices are not out there. So, and how best can we transform livelihoods, and how best can we ensure that every woman, every village woman has food in their table? And also, as the climate change resilience, how best can we integrate agroecology in all policies, nationally, internationally, and even regionally? Thank you.
And now I'd like to turn to Patty Fong here in the hall, who's from the Global Alliance for the Future of Food, to tell us about an exciting new document that you're producing.
Thank you, Fergus. It's a pleasure to be here. Just a bit about the Global Alliance. So we are a strategic alliance of philanthropy. Our members work together and with others to advance the need for food systems transformation. And as you've heard from Emile, and even you, we've talked about the Food Systems Summit and the unprecedented opportunity it created to really lift up the need that we urgently need to transform our food systems. And the opportunity that came out of it, for example, the Coalition on Agroecology, of which we are also excited to be a part of. We have been committed to upholding agroecology, regenerative approaches, and indigenous food waste to food systems transformation, and to advocate for their adoption, enablement, and implementation. And we've done this for almost a decade globally with partners and with others here today in this room. It's clear that agroecology delivers food systems that are more resilient, low carbon, climate adapted, as well as other social and environmental benefits. Yet, time and again, we, like you, have been asked about the existing evidence that backs up the potential of these approaches. The roots of agroecology, regenerative approaches, and indigenous foodways represent a continuous source of knowledge that can inform us on how to repair the relationship between people and nature, as you've heard from the Vice Minister from Peru. But the evidence exists in a battleground of knowledge, a battleground over knowledge and power. And it's the politics of knowledge that all too often keeps these approaches from being understood, taken up, and acted upon, even when we need them most. In our forthcoming compendium, The Politics of Knowledge, Understanding the Evidence for Agroecology, Regenerative Approaches, and Indigenous Foodways, we tackle this by highlighting the dominant questions holding back change, unpacking the narratives and legacies that underpin them, and explore the many ways funders, researchers, and policymakers can take action. Developed in collaboration with 17 diverse contributors from around the world, the compendium features case studies and evidence that show that action is already underway. And what the research confirmed to us is that a diversity of evidence demonstrating the transformative potential of agroecology already exists. That's not being acted upon is a meta issue that a narrow view of what counts means certain types of expertise are elevated over others. It means a broad array of evidence is not considered, documented, published, or even heard. We know this, and where we go next is critical. To accelerate systemic transformation that will build equitable, sustainable food systems, we need to decolonize and democratize knowledge systems within education, research, and innovation. For networks like the Global Alliance, funders and donors must step up to catalyze a research and action agenda that is transdisciplinary, that is focused on political and social justice and the right to food and food sovereignty, and that challenges entrenched power, vested interests, and structural lock-ins. Participatory, transdisciplinary research and action agendas that bring together farmers, researchers, policymakers, donors, consumers, youth, and other actors across food systems are key to our food systems transformation. As we gather here at COP26, centering food systems transformation and climate action is critical to delivering on interconnected goals, from tackling malnutrition in all its forms to protecting planetary health and upholding ecological integrity. One significant way to do this is to ensure that food systems are integrated in the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, and across national processes, like the pathways to 2030 that are being developed out of the Food Systems Summit. Research that we're now doing into the NDCs, which will launch early next year, does share some glimmers of hope in this regard. So in addition to what you heard about Peru, we've also analyzed that countries like Colombia and Kenya have put forward the most ambitious set of agroecological measures, but these glimmers aren't enough. Much more work is needed to build critical mass around a vision of food systems that are renewable, healthy, equitable, resilient, diverse, inclusive, and interconnected, and to catalyze solutions that deliver on these principles. Acting on the diversity of evidence and taking steps to influence the 2025 NDCs are critical political opportunities that should be seized by climate, nature, health, food systems, and farming advocates alike. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I see that we have Monica with us now, also live. We have just a very short space of time for questions. Please, if anybody in the audience has a burning question, raise your hand. In the meantime, I'm going to start with one that's come from the much larger audience, which is listening into this on the internet. And I'll ask all of you perhaps to address this. And it's really a very pertinent question. And it's that equity is one of the key principles that needs to be dealt with in agroecology. And yet, here at COP26, we're very aware of even simple issues like vaccine equity is really not happening at all. So there seems to be a whole mismatch between what people articulate as principles that they want to follow and what actually happens. And I wonder whether you've got anything that you could say about how to get equity really onto the starting blocks. Perhaps we could start with Jenna and then go to Monica and then Patty and see how we go. Jenna.
Definitely. I love the question because, of course, this is what the Yungo constituency is advocating for, is equity in solidarity with our other stakeholder groups, right? So, of course, we advocate for our voices to be heard at these global fora. And we like to remind these stakeholders that a lot of times these inclusion mechanisms are also about putting the finance where the words are. And this leads into GLF for tomorrow, definitely, because these vulnerable groups don't have the same capital resources as other groups, and so that's definitely key. And then also making systemic ways which these groups can engage. It's very important. Youth, for example, are explicitly mentioned in these plans, so that when we are going through and making the implementation, we actually say, okay, and now we need to involve youth, and in a democratic way, where youth are picking their own delegates as well, and we're also not cherry-picking folks that we agree with and may not be critical of us, and really have a constructive conversation together with.
Fantastic. Monica, let's hope your connection is good enough. Is there anything you'd like to say about this equity issue?
Yes, I think to me, agroecology is gender equality, because especially when you come from indigenous perspective, where land is patriarchal, land is male-owned. So to us, every small space we get and we utilize that through agroecology is gender equality to us. So we need to speak about land tenure rights for indigenous women, also for other women who are not indigenous, because without land, there's no food. And you see, in Africa society, women are food producers. So we need to speak about how do we make sure that women access, use, and own land. So that to me would be now supporting gender equality and also equity in food production and food sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you. And Patty?
Well, when you talk about equity, it comes down to power and the power asymmetries, and recognizing that there are power asymmetries in the system. And it's about those who are empowered being willing to share that power, and how do you do that is through setting up processes. So I'll refer back to the NDC work that we're currently analyzing 14 countries. We've done 8 so far, and with the exception of one country, that was Colombia, they had a quite inclusive, transparent process with engaging with multiple stakeholders. Most countries have tried their best to engage with different ministries, but when it comes to engaging with multiple diverse stakeholders, they really fall short. But actually, if you want climate solutions to be successful, if you want to be co-owned and implemented successfully, you have to engage those who are most impacted from the beginning. And those who are most impacted are not engaged, they're not consulted, they're not offering solutions. But if you want to, for example, take forward agroecology, it really needs to be context-specific. It needs to be owned, it has to be developed on the ground, but they're not part of those discussions. So that is really the first step, is really recognizing that those who hold the knowledge need to be at the table.
Fantastic. Well, we've come to the end of the time that we have allotted for this session. So I want to finish by just making a closing remark. And I think one of the key recommendations in the HLPE report was actually about agency. An agency of all actors in food systems, and it's really equity of agency, I think, that we need to be pursuing in order to make a difference. And that brings me to something that Emile touched upon, which is really important, and I think it speaks, Patty, to the political economy analysis that you were presenting. And that is that it's really important in the coalition that people are comprehensive in the way that they implement the 13 principles, not selective, picking one here and one there and leaving others, because that way you don't have agroecology. You may have some bits and pieces, but you don't get the holistic social and governance dimensions, which are as important as the agroecosystem management aspects that we often tend to focus on. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody who's taken part, the lively audience here in Glasgow, and all the participants in the panel, and all those of you who are watching it now virtually, and those who will watch the recordings, which will be streamed over the next 2 or 3 weeks, so that these messages get out very, very widely and get appreciated. Thank you, and goodbye.